Hello guys, on Voice of Betrayal, where every lie has a voice. When I first moved to South Korea, I wasn't looking for love. I was just another American teaching English abroad, the kind of person who signs a one-year contract, figuring it'll be an adventure before heading home. But 1 year turned into 2, then 3, and in that time my entire life took a direction I never expected. That's where I met her. My future wife. She was a Korean emergency room nurse, sharp, dedicated, and with a quiet warmth that drew me in. At first, the language barrier was there, but we somehow bridged it. She laughed at my broken Korean, and I admired her determination to understand my English. We built something real, or so I believed at the time. I still remember the first nights we spent together, the tiny restaurants tucked into alleys, the smell of grilled pork belly in the air, and the neon signs reflecting off wet pavement. She'd squeeze my hand under the table, and I thought I'd won the lottery of life. We weren't perfect, far from it. Our fights could be explosive. Sometimes it was cultural differences, sometimes just the stress of two people trying to figure out adulthood together. But she always ended those fights with teary apologies, swearing she loved me more than anything. And I believed her. After a few years, marriage felt like the natural step. We stood before our friends and family, promising forever. She told me she wanted to move to America one day, to start over, to chase bigger dreams. She was ambitious, hardworking, and she believed she could become a nurse in the US. I was tired of teaching English and thought, why not? America would be a new beginning for us both. Before the move, she enrolled in an English academy. She'd spend long hours there, practicing grammar, writing essays, and trying to lose her accent. I was proud of her. She was so determined, so focused. But little did I know those hours she spent there weren't just about English. At first, I noticed small changes. She had always been so proud to show me off on KakaoTalk, the Korean messaging app everyone used. Our smiling pictures were her profile image. Then one day, they were gone. When I asked about it, she brushed it off. It's nothing. Don't worry so much. But I did worry. I couldn't explain why, but I felt something shifting. Her attitude toward me grew sharper. Small disagreements turned into full-on fights. She'd roll her eyes when I tried to hug her. Still, I convinced myself it was just stress. We were planning a huge move, after all. There were nights she didn't come home, claiming she was at her sister's place. Each time, she had an excuse that sounded believable enough. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. I didn't want to think the worst. After all, she had sworn she'd never cheat on me, not in a million years. And I clung to that promise. But trust is fragile. And mine was about to be shattered. It was one of those nights when silence feels heavier than noise. Our small apartment in Seoul was too quiet, too empty. She had told me she was staying at her sister's place because they needed to catch an early flight in the morning. I tried to convince myself it made sense. But the longer I sat there alone, the more uneasy I became. Out of habit, I picked up my phone and sent her a message on KakaoTalk. Hey, just wanted to say good night. Love you. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing. What bothered me wasn't just the lack of reply, it was the fact that KakaoTalk shows when a message has been read. Mine hadn't even been opened. Later I would realize why. She had blocked me. I called. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. That sinking, twisting feeling in my stomach grew until I couldn't take it anymore. I saw her sister was online on KakaoTalk. With shaky hands, I called her. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Sorry to bother you, but, is my wife with you tonight? She said she was staying over. There was a pause, then her sister's confused voice. What? No, she's not here. I haven't seen her. Why? The bottom dropped out of my world. My mind raced, but my mouth went dry. Oh, she told me she was staying with you. That's why I was asking. Her sister hesitated, clearly surprised. I don't know where she is. Maybe you should call her. After I hung up, I sat there stunned. My heart pounded as the pieces started coming together, her mood swings, her distance, the fights over nothing. I wanted to believe in her, but the truth was pressing down on me. Not long after, my phone lit up. It was her. "Why did you call my sister?" she snapped, her voice defensive, not apologetic. "Because you told me you were with her." "Where the hell are you?" I shouted, unable to contain myself. "Don't lie to me anymore. You come home now, or we're done." There was silence, then a sigh. "Fine. I'll come back." When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Her face was tired, her makeup smeared. She avoided my eyes. Without a word, she motioned for me to get into her car. As we sat in the dimly lit parking lot, she started her story. "I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be mad. I was out, clubbing with some single girlfriends. They wanted to meet guys, and I was just helping them. That's all." Her voice trembled, but not with guilt, more like she was rehearsing a line. Something inside me snapped. "Give me your phone," I demanded. "What?" "No," she started, clutching it. But I was faster. I yanked it out of her hands and opened Kakao Talk. My heart raced as I scrolled through her messages. I clicked on the first conversation and started snapping pictures with my own phone before she could stop me. And there it was, the truth, raw and undeniable. Flirty messages. Late-night exchanges. Explicit words. Photos. It wasn't her girlfriend she had been with. It was a teacher from her English academy. The same academy where she had been spending all those extra hours. Her face crumpled, and she reached for the phone, sobbing. "Please, please stop. Don't look anymore. I don't want to hurt you more than this." But the damage was already done. The walls of my world came crashing down in that moment. The woman I thought I knew, the one who had sworn she'd never betray me, was having an affair right under my nose. And yet, despite the shock, the rage, and the heartbreak tearing through me, part of me still wanted to believe it could somehow be fixed. That was the cruelest part. The drive back to our apartment was silent, but my mind wasn't. It screamed with 1,000 thoughts at once. How could she do this? Who is she, really? Was our whole marriage a lie? She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Finally, when we parked, she turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I swear it's over. Please, don't leave me." Her words bounced around the car like echoes in an empty room. I wanted to yell, to curse, to tell her she had destroyed everything. But I just sat there, numb. Back inside the apartment, she fell to her knees. "Please forgive me," she begged. "I made a mistake. It meant nothing. I love you. Only you." I stared at her, this woman I had promised forever to. My heart ached with a pain so deep I could barely breathe. "How could you say you love me, and do this?" My voice cracked. She reached for me, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear her touch. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. My chest felt heavy, as if someone had placed a stone on it. I thought about my family back in the States, about how they would react if I showed up alone, broken, with my marriage in ruins. I thought about the long 18-hour flight I'd have to take by myself, knowing I had failed in the most intimate part of my life. And I thought about how lonely I truly was in Korea. Most of my friends from the early days of teaching had long since gone home. My world here had become small, her, our apartment, and the dream we were supposed to be building together. She must have sensed that weakness. Over the next few days, she begged relentlessly. Notes, texts, soft kisses on my shoulder I didn't want but didn't resist. She promised me a new beginning in America, where everything would be different. "It'll never happen again," she said. "Please, let's start fresh." I told her no at first. Again and again, I told her I was leaving, that we were finished. But grief is a strange thing. It doesn't always move you forward, it traps you, holds you hostage in the memory of what you thought you had. Eventually, I broke. Not because I forgave her. Not because I trusted her. But because I couldn't bear the thought of being completely alone. I convinced myself that people make mistakes, that maybe she truly regretted it, that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild. So I gave her that second chance. And a month later, hand in hand, we boarded a plane bound for the United States. I told myself it was the beginning of a new chapter. What I didn't know then was that the wound she had carved into my heart would never heal the way I wanted. It would fester, and one day, it would tear open again in a way I couldn't have imagined. Coming back to the United States was supposed to be a reset button. At least, that's what I told myself. But reality hit fast. Leaving Korea meant leaving behind years of work experience that didn't translate well into American job markets. English teacher in South Korea wasn't exactly a golden ticket on a resume. I scrambled for anything, delivery gigs, part-time shifts, whatever could keep us afloat. I worked long hours for little pay, returning home exhausted, while she poured her energy into preparing to become a nurse in America. Money slipped through our fingers faster than we could earn it. Eventually, the weight of bills and rent pushed us into a decision I never thought I'd make, moving back in with my parents. At 30-something years old, carrying my wife and a suitcase of broken trust into my childhood home, I felt like a failure. Still, there was a silver lining. My parents' place was a safe haven, and after a few months of grinding, I landed a job at a solid company, a place I had briefly worked at years before Korea. The pay was decent, the environment steady. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope flicker. Then she got hired at the same company. We told ourselves this was fate, a chance to grow together again, side by side, earning good money and planning for a future we'd almost lost. We moved into our own apartment, small but ours, and filled it with second-hand furniture and cautious optimism. For a while, things seemed almost normal. We laughed together sometimes. We cooked meals in the kitchen, arguing playfully over whether her Korean recipes or my clumsy American ones were better. We even went out on dates, trying to stitch together a love that had once felt effortless. But beneath the surface, cracks lingered. The fights never truly went away. Sometimes they flared over the smallest things, things that shouldn't matter. Like the day I left a half-empty can of Monster Energy drink by the sink. She picked it up, glaring at it like it was an insult. "I told you not to leave these here," she snapped. Her tone was sharp, cutting. I frowned. "What are you talking about? You've never said anything about it before." She slammed it down, her voice rising. "Dump them in the sink right now, or next time I'll pour them all over your pillow." The venom in her words stunned me. Over an energy drink. She always apologized later, softening her voice, clinging to me as if she couldn't bear to see me upset. But those moments of rage stayed with me. They carved small wounds that never healed, whispering reminders that something between us was still broken. And yet, I stayed. I told myself couples fight. I told myself marriage wasn't supposed to be easy. I told myself she had learned from her mistake back in Korea, that she was truly trying. I wanted so badly to believe we were healing. But deep down, a part of me knew the truth, what we had was fragile. And sooner or later, it would all come crashing down again. By the time 2024 rolled around, the fragile piece we had built was cracking again. On the surface, things looked fine. We both had stable jobs, a decent apartment, and routines that kept us busy. But love isn't sustained by paychecks or schedules. It needs something deeper: connection, intimacy, respect. And those things were slowly eroding between us. She had a habit of traveling back to Korea once a year. At first, I didn't think much of it. It made sense: her family was there, her roots, her culture. She'd usually stay for a few weeks, and I told myself it was normal for her to miss home. But the more often she went, the more I noticed how distant she became after returning. It was like each trip pulled her further away from me. She'd come back sharper, more impatient, less interested in the life we were building here. Our arguments became more frequent, and the things she got angry about often made no sense to me. Sometimes, I'd wonder if she was picking fights just to create distance, to push me away without having to say the words out loud. The tension grew until, finally, we couldn't ignore it anymore. Sitting across from each other one evening in the living room, we both admitted what had been hanging over us for months. "I don't think this is working," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the floor. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "You're right. Maybe we should get divorced." The words cut deep, even though I was the one saying them. Divorce wasn't supposed to be part of our story. And yet, here we were, two people who had once promised forever, now giving up. Still, neither of us had the money to end the lease and move out. So we stayed in the same apartment, living like uneasy roommates. Friends, sometimes. Lovers, occasionally. But not husband and wife in any true sense. And here's the cruelest part: despite everything she had done to me, despite the betrayal that had nearly destroyed me back in Korea, I still loved her. I couldn't switch it off. I couldn't erase the memories of when she held my hand in crowded Seoul streets, or when she'd curl up next to me on winter nights whispering dreams about our future. Love isn't logical. It doesn't care about scars. So even as the divorce paperwork crawled through the system, even as we both admitted out loud that it was over, I kept a small part of myself hoping she'd turn around and say, "Let's try again. Let's make it work." That hope kept me tethered to her. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that her next trip to Korea that winter would unravel the final thread of our marriage. And the truth of what she had been doing all those years would hit me harder than anything before. She booked her winter trip to Korea as if nothing was unusual. By then, our divorce paperwork was already in motion, but because of money we were still under the same roof, still sharing the same bed some nights, still caught in that strange in-between where love and resentment overlap. When she boarded that plane, I thought nothing of it. I figured it was just another annual visit, family dinners, catching up with friends, maybe a little shopping. I tried not to think about the distance between us. Then the call came. It was late at night in the US, and I saw her name flash on my phone. Her voice was shaky, her words tumbling out in a flood of panic. "You won't believe what happened," she said, almost in tears. "I just got a call on KakaoTalk, from his wife." My stomach tightened. I didn't need to ask who he was. The teacher from the English Academy. The first affair. The man I thought was just a ghost from the past. She was furious, my wife continued, her voice trembling. She demanded to know everything. So I confessed. I told her everything that happened years ago. I sat there in silence, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles ached. "But that's not all," she whispered. "She says she's going to sue me." For a moment, I thought I misheard. "Sue you? For what?" In Korea, adultery isn't a crime anymore, but it's still a civil offense. The betrayed spouse can sue the person their partner cheated with. She sent me a legal notice. I need a lawyer. I don't know what to do. I was stunned. Sued for adultery. That sounded absurd, at least by American standards. Here, infidelity is heartbreaking, but it isn't something you can drag into court. But in Korea, apparently, it was different. As she cried over the phone, begging me to help her figure out how to pay for a lawyer, something in the back of my mind felt off. Why now? Why would his wife suddenly discover an affair from 4 years ago, right at the exact time my wife was in Korea? She could have found out any time, months ago, years ago, but this happened the very week my wife flew back across the ocean. The timing gnawed at me. Still, she swore up and down it was just coincidence. She swore she hadn't seen him, hadn't spoken to him, hadn't even thought about him since 2020. She blamed it on old essays she had written back in the academy, essays his wife must have found, sparking her fury. Her story didn't sit right with me, but I wanted to believe her. Or maybe I just didn't want to face the possibility that she had betrayed me again. So I helped her. She used her credit card to hire a lawyer in Korea, and she had me sign over the legal rights to sue him as her husband, because under Korean law, I technically still could. I didn't care about suing anyone. I didn't want money. But she insisted, and I gave in. I thought that was the end of it. But in reality, it was only the beginning. Because soon, the man himself would contact me. And what he had to say would unravel every lie she had spun, exposing a truth far worse than I ever imagined. A few weeks passed after she told me about the lawsuit. Things were strangely quiet. She was still in Korea, tied up with lawyers and paperwork, while I stayed in the US, going through the motions of our half-dead marriage. Then one morning, I opened my email and froze. The sender's name stopped my heart, him. The man she had cheated with all those years ago. I hesitated before clicking, my pulse pounding in my ears. And then I read. The message was long, but it began simply. "I owe you an apology." He explained that he had learned about the lawsuit, because my wife was suing him on my behalf. And he felt he needed to tell me the truth. At first, his words seemed almost rehearsed, the standard apology, the regret, the acknowledgement of the damage he had caused. But as I read further, my world tilted. He admitted that when my wife had flown back to Korea that winter, she had contacted him immediately, within a day of arriving. She had begged him to meet. At the time, he claimed, he didn't want to. His marriage was fragile too, and he and his wife were trying for another baby. But my wife had been insistent. Reluctantly, he agreed to have lunch with her, hoping it would be a brief and harmless meeting. Over lunch, she told him she still had deep feelings for him. She wanted more. She wanted to rekindle what they had started years ago. She even pushed for sex that very day. He said he refused. He drove her to a subway station and tried to end it. A few days later, she texted again, confessing her love, pressing him to meet. That's when he told her directly, he didn't feel the same way, he didn't want her, and he didn't want to see her again. And that's when, according to him, she snapped. In anger, she found his wife's number, maybe from his car, maybe by searching, and she confessed everything. Not just what had happened in 2020, but everything. Years of contact. Hidden messages through Instagram, Snapchat, even shared Google Docs. Secret hotel meetings. Online tutoring sessions that blurred into sexual conversations. Trips in 2023 where she had booked hotels just for him. She had poured it all out in a fit of rage. And his wife would have never known, never, if my wife hadn't told her herself. At the end of the email, he included screenshots. Proof. Photographs of the exact messages my wife had sent to his wife. They were devastating. I sat there staring at my screen, the blood draining from my face. Every word my wife had fed me about no contact since 2020, every excuse about old essays being discovered, it was all a lie. The truth was, she had never stopped. For 4 years, she had carried on with this man behind my back, even as we moved to the US, even as we tried to rebuild, even as I convinced myself she had changed. My hands shook. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. And yet, somewhere deep down, I realized, this story, his story, made far more sense than hers ever did. The timing, the anger, the lawsuit, it all clicked together like cruel puzzle pieces. She had betrayed me again. And this time, there was no denying it. When she finally returned from Korea, I was waiting. I had spent days replaying the man's email over and over in my head, memorizing every line, staring at the screenshots until my eyes blurred. A part of me still wanted to believe there was some mistake, some angle I was missing. But deep down, I knew. That night, I sat her down in the living room. She seemed calm, even a little smug, as if she thought the whole lawsuit ordeal was behind her. "There's something I need to ask you," I began, my voice steady but my heart racing. She tilted her head, suspicious. "What is it?" "The timing," I said slowly. "It doesn't make sense. His wife just happened to find out about something from 4 years ago, while you were in Korea. That's not a coincidence. Did you see him? Did you meet him again?" Her eyes flashed with indignation. "No. I told you already. I haven't seen him or spoken to him since 2020. Why don't you trust me?" "Because you've given me every reason not to," I wanted to scream. But instead, I leaned forward. "Are you sure about that? Because it really doesn't add up." She crossed her arms, her face hardening. "I swear. Nothing happened. Believe me." And that's when I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered for a moment over the screen, then I opened the email. I slid the phone across the table toward her, the glow of the screen lighting up her face. Her eyes darted over the words. Then the screenshots. The messages she had sent. The confession she had poured out to his wife in her rage. The color drained from her face. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then I said, quietly, "He told me everything. And he sent proof. Don't lie to me anymore." Her lips trembled. She looked down, then away, then back at me. And finally, she broke. "Yes," she whispered. "It's true." The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. She tried to explain, to soften the blow, her voice rushing with desperation. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I loved him, but he pushed me away. That's why I told his wife. I wanted to hurt him back. But you, she reached for my hand, her tears falling fast, you're the one I want. Please, believe that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I pulled my hand away. Sorry. My voice cracked with rage. You've been lying to me for years. Not months. Not one mistake. Years. While I worked myself to the bone, while I thought we were rebuilding, you were sneaking around with him. And you had the nerve to look me in the eye and swear it was over. She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. I didn't want to lose you. I laughed bitterly. You lost me the moment you chose him. The fight drained out of me all at once, leaving only exhaustion. For the second time in my life, my world had shattered because of her. But this time was different. This time, there was no fixing it. This was the end. After that night, the air in our apartment was thick with silence. We still had to live together, two ghosts trapped in the same cage. The divorce papers were already grinding their way through the courts, but now, the emotional divorce had already happened. There was nothing left between us but the bitterness of broken trust. She cried often. Sometimes she tried to hug me, to apologize again, to insist she never truly loved him, that she had only been confused, desperate for attention. Other times, she lashed out, accusing me of being too cold, too distant, of giving up on us too easily. But I had no fight left in me. Every word out of her mouth felt hollow. Every touch felt contaminated. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the screenshots, the words she had written, the confession she had made, the feelings she had poured into another man while I was standing right there in her life. The cruelest irony was this: if she had kept quiet, I might never have found out the full truth. His wife would have remained in the dark. I would have continued believing her story about one mistake back in 2020, and maybe I would have kept fighting for us. But in her anger, when he rejected her one last time, she had set fire to everything. She had exposed herself, destroyed her own lies, and dragged me into the ashes with her. In a twisted way, she had saved me. Because now, finally, I could see her clearly. Not as the woman I had fallen in love with in soul, not as the bride I had carried across the threshold, but as someone who was willing to betray, manipulate, and deceive for years without remorse. That realization hurt more than anything else. But it was also freeing. I stopped waiting for her to change. I stopped hoping for reconciliation. I stopped torturing myself with the question of whether I wasn't enough. The truth was simple: she made her choice. Again and again, she chose him over me. And no amount of apologies could rewrite that. By the time spring came, we were nothing more than two strangers sharing rent until the divorce was finalized. The love that once held us together had rotted into something unrecognizable. And though my heart still carried scars, there was a strange calm in knowing the story was finally over. Or so I thought. Because just when I began to accept the end, a new chapter in her betrayal revealed itself, one that would drag me even deeper into the wreckage. I thought the storm had passed. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. It started innocently enough, a forwarded message from a friend, asking if I'd seen her latest social media posts. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe just her trying to show she was moving on. But when I clicked through, my stomach dropped. There she was. Smiling. Laughing. Posing. But not in the way someone trying to recover from a breakup posts. No, these weren't casual selfies or vacation photos. She was flirty, suggestive, interacting with men I didn't know, men she had never mentioned. And then I saw the messages. Screenshots, forwarded from someone who knew what she was doing. She had been sending pictures, private texts, and videos to men online, men she met in forums, through apps, through friends of friends. Men she hadn't told me about, men she never expected me to discover. A cold fury gripped me. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was calculated, deliberate, and ongoing. She had built a whole hidden world behind my back while pretending to mourn the collapse of our marriage. The betrayal wasn't just past tense, it was happening in real time. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. My chest ached. How could she do this again, after everything? After the confrontation, after the divorce process, after the pain she had already caused. And yet, even in my anger, a part of me was numb. I wasn't shocked by her ability to betray anymore. I was shocked by my own exhaustion, my own willingness to be blindsided one more time. I confronted her. Calmly, this time. There was no yelling, no pleading. Just a quiet demand for the truth. She didn't deny it. Not at first. She hesitated, then laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that made me feel like I was staring at a stranger. "It's not like it matters anymore," she said. "We're over. I can do what I want." Her words cut deeper than any argument we'd ever had. Because she was right. She had removed herself from the bonds of our marriage long ago. Every apology, every promise, every tear had been meaningless. And in that moment, I realized something profound. My pain, my heartbreak, my anger, these were mine to own. She had no control over them anymore. Her choices were hers, my life was still mine. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her loyalty. I didn't need her to stop hurting me, because she had already done that, completely. All I could do now was pick up the pieces and walk away. The third betrayal was the final confirmation. She was gone from my life, emotionally and morally. And I was free, finally, painfully, and irrevocably free. The house was quiet now. Too quiet, in a way that was both painful and strangely liberating. No arguments, no whispered betrayals behind my back, no tense silences filled with suspicion. Just the hum of life trying to continue, indifferent to the wreckage left behind. I spent the first few days like a ghost. Moving through the motions, preparing meals, cleaning up after my daughter, answering calls, but every action felt hollow. The betrayal still burned inside me, a raw, pulsing wound. But amidst that pain, a small, stubborn spark began to grow, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I could reclaim some part of my life. I started with the small things. A morning run before my daughter woke up. A long shower that felt like washing away more than just the dirt and sweat. Listening to music I hadn't touched since we were together, songs that reminded me of who I had been before the heartbreak. Then came the paperwork, the divorce finalized, the custody arrangements clarified. Seeing it in black and white was sobering. My life had officially split in two, the past I had loved and lost, and the future I had to build alone. I focused on my daughter. She was my anchor, my reason for keeping my heart intact even when it felt like it was crumbling. Her laughter, her little jokes, the way she'd curl into my lap and insist on bedtime stories, it reminded me that life wasn't just pain. Life could still be gentle, even amid chaos. I started setting boundaries. Social media became a filtered space. I limited contact with people who thrived on gossip or dragged me back into anger. I reconnected with friends who had been sidelined during the marriage, people who reminded me of who I truly was, before the lies, before the betrayals. And slowly, tentatively, I began to rediscover myself. I remembered passions I had shelved for years, writing, photography, late-night walks that cleared my head. I even joined a small local group of writers, people who had stories of their own, scars and triumphs that mirrored mine. Sharing pieces of my pain in that safe space didn't erase it, but it made it lighter, more bearable. At night, after my daughter was asleep, I allowed myself to feel anger, sadness, grief. But now, it wasn't endless, it was finite. I cried, I raged, I wrote, I sat in silence. And each time, I felt a little stronger, a little more whole. The betrayal had taken so much from me, but it hadn't taken everything. It hadn't taken my heart, not entirely. And it hadn't taken my life. One day, I knew, I would look back and see this period not just as devastation, but as the moment I reclaimed myself. The moment I refused to be defined by someone else's choices. The road ahead was uncertain, yes. Pain would linger. Memories would sting. But for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt a fragile sense of hope. I was alive. I was free. And I was beginning to rebuild. The years after the betrayal were not easy. There were moments of doubt, nights of quiet sadness, and days when the weight of what had happened felt almost unbearable. Yet through it all, I discovered something I hadn't realized before: resilience isn't about avoiding pain, it's about moving forward despite it. I learned to embrace the small joys, the ordinary moments that carry extraordinary meaning. Watching my daughter grow, sharing laughter with friends, feeling the warmth of human connection, these became the threads that wove a new life, one I could call my own. I forgave, not for the sake of others, but for myself. Forgiveness didn't erase the past, it freed me from being chained to it. And with that freedom came clarity. Life is too short to dwell on betrayal, too precious to waste on bitterness. I discovered strength I didn't know I had, a quiet power in standing tall, even when the ground beneath me had crumbled. And I discovered hope, that the heart, no matter how broken, can heal and grow stronger. Looking back, the pain was undeniable, but so was the growth it sparked. The man I became was not defined by loss, but by perseverance, love, and the courage to trust life again. And in that realization, I finally found peace. Life had not ended, it had simply begun again, in a new form, richer and more resilient than I could have imagined.